Hello, everybody. Welcome to Expression Pass here on Boss Rush Network. I'm your host and lots excited, Eddie V. Joining me is the one, the only bossman himself, Mr. Corey Dirrig. Hello, good sir.
Hello, Edward. Was that pause on purpose? Did you forget your name?
In a way, yes.
This is how long we've been doing this. We just forget everything.
Yeah, sometimes we just get to the point and be like, well, everybody, as you can see, we're still continuing our journey on Nintendo launch.
We're still here, sort of.
Yes.
Some of us are forgetful. Some of us are high on our sleeping drugs.
Dude, I'm just ready to get to Taco Bell, get that street corn tacos. I'm hungry again.
I had tacos tonight. They were very good, but now I feel super fat.
So yes, everybody, we're doing GBA. To let you know, we still have the Nintendo 64. We have the Game Boy in all those iterations. We have the Super Nintendo and the NES. So we're almost done with the launch lineup. We are scheduling.
Are we going to do the Virtual Boy, Ed?
I haven't played anything on Virtual Boy.
We should throw that into the Game Boy one.
We can do that.
We'll talk about it for like 5 minutes.
We can do that. That's no problem.
The easiest library to collect. There's only 14 games in the U.S.
And I played none of them.
I played a couple of them. I had 4 at one point.
Yeah, I never asked for it for the Virtual Boy. That is another... Go ahead.
Just real quick. I had one, and I had this. It was the most painful day of my life. I had to sell it to pay rent. And not at a time when it was worth a lot of money either. I think it was worth. I mean, it was still worth money, but not a ton.
Yes. Well, everybody, the Game Boy Advance released on June 11, 2001. It came in 3 colors: white, indigo, and glacier, and it was $99.99.
It's awesome
when it released. Yes.
Which color do you have?
Indigo, the purple one.
Me too. It matched the GameCube.
Yes, but this is the thing about the GameCube. I got the black one when it dropped. When it dropped to $99.99. That's when I got my black one. I think I said I got it at launch and everything, but I remember I got the black one. It was $100 cheap.
Yeah, man, what a great deal! Nobody bought them. We only knew Edward. We would bought them all, sold them, and funded this empire.
Yes, and now the GameCube and Dreamcast is like equal on how much people love him and playing the games and excited to be on the NSO.
Yeah. Think Dreamcast will make its way over?
It has to.
I feel like it doesn't. I feel like it makes its way over now that GameCube's there.
We were talking about raising prices, like a $10 increase for NSO because of the weekend. But I would definitely upgrade if they did Saturn and Dreamcast. And I definitely want the Saturn stuff on there because only game that I played for Saturn was Knights. That's the only game that I got to play for Saturn. I never got to try anything else. So I would love to play Saturn on Switch. Dreamcast, just give me that full collection.
I mean, there's only like 12 games I really need on there, right? You got Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, which I guess they would throw Sonic Shuffle in there on that note, which is like their Mario Party ripoff.
Yeah.
You throw on Phantasy Star Online, right? That would be like an easy no-brainer, I feel like. Skies of Arcadia.
Oh, yes.
Shenmue 1 and 2. Crazy Taxi 1 and 2. Throw Illbleed on there for me. And Blue Stinger.
I would need Soul Calibur on there.
Yeah, I mean, Soul Calibur is a no-brainer, right? If you're putting the second one on GameCube, you can put the first one on the Dreamcast, right?
Yes. House of the Dead 1 and 2, I would need. I think they did House of the Dead 3. I'm not sure. Yeah, I did. Like you mentioned, Skies of Arcadia. Elemental, Jet Set Radio, Elemental Gimmick Gear. It was a top-down 2D adventure role playing game. Like
Mm-hmm.
really, just such the box art looks crazy, but it
Mm-hmm.
is a really beautiful animated looking game. I think it's like kind of almost 2.5D sprite based, hand drawn. It looks really really good. Ready to rumble. I would
Mm-hmm.
need
That was on N64 too, though. I wonder if they would just do that because they wouldn't have to pay Sega the licensing fees.
because that is Midway.
Yeah, which means it's Warner Brothers, which means
Yeah.
yeah, it'll get there someday. Warner Brothers needs money, right?
And this time, yeah, they do.
Um,
Um,
I would say Power Stone, but that's coming in that Capcom Fighting Collection too.
they can still do it. We get a Super Mario um Sunshine, and that's
Yeah, but
already
that's
on the collection.
yeah, but that's first party, right? I think.
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's gonna be. The reason why I say third party games most likely aren't coming over, although Turok made its way over, Turok 1 and 2, and they sell those. Atari sells those through Night Dive, right? So like those
Yeah,
HD collections. So I don't know. But I just think third party games are going to be harder and harder to see on NSO because a lot of these companies sell their own collections of these games and they make plenty of
yes,
money on them, right? So, like Mega Man, well, you'll never see Mega Man over there. That Legacy collection, they sell that thing and like it's on sale all the time, or like the Castlevania collections will never be there.
yeah. I think Radiant Silver Gun and Ikaruga won't be on the Dreamcast, even though those games came out. No, Radiant Silver Gun was Saturn. Only Ikaruga was on Dreamcast, but we already have those games out already on Switch.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. Like normal, we start this episode today. We're going to talk about one thing, and 5 seconds later, we're talking about something totally different.
Welcome to Expression Pass. Welcome to anything Nintendo. With me and Corey are together.
Mhm.
So yes, let's get into this launch lineup. So Super Mario Advance, F-Zero Maximum Velocity, Army Man Advance, High Heat Baseball 2002, Tony Hawk Pro Skater, Dodgeball Advance, Fire Pro Wrestling, Top Gear GT Championship, Tweety and the Magic Jewel, Fortress, Iridian 3D, Pitfall, The Mayhem Adventures, Ready to Rumble, Boxing Round 2, Choo Choo Rocket, and Raymond. Oh, speaking of Choo Choo Rocket, that's another game on Dreamcast. That demo disc stuff. But sorry about that. I'm just going to be up in front with everybody. I played none of these launch games.
Hmm.
I was in college around this time, and so I end up getting a Game Boy Advance a little bit later. I actually got one for Christmas. It was my Christmas gift from my mom that year, and some games and stuff. I can actually tell you, I had Final Fight 1. Because the regular Final Fight on Super Nintendo, it only had Cody and Mike. This one had Cody, Mike, and Guy on it. So that's the one that I had. I had Street Fighter Alpha 3 on it. Um I had Golden Sun 1 and 2. I had The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap on it. Uh and then like some other games I also had on it. What about you, Corey?
So I actually had a couple of these games at launch, and I played them for a long time. Uh, so I had Super Mario Advance at launch, which is the best version of Super Mario 2, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
clearly the best. Uh, clearly the best version of Mario 2, in my opinion. It's better than the Super Nintendo one. It's better than the NES one. I love this version. I had Army Men, which was a weird one to get at launch. And it was already like it was already like the $20 game or like the 15, like it was cheap, man. Uh and then I had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I think it was Tony Hawk 2, I think launched with it. But I had it and that version of Tony Hawk was incredible. It was like this isometric version of the game that, dude, it was so good. This version of Tony Hawk was one of the weirdest, craziest things I had ever seen on a handheld console at the time.
Uh-huh.
Like, it was like rendered in like almost fully 3D. Like, it was almost like a, I almost want to say like Resident Evil-esque, where like the backgrounds were like pre-rendered, but somehow done in a 3D fashion. They looked
Yes.
pre-rendered, right? But like then the character models were all done in this weird, like almost, I don't even know how to explain it, but like it was totally in 3D and worked like it worked just like you would expect Tony Hawk to work, right? Like you could grind, you could jump, you could do all the tricks. And obviously it didn't have as many buttons as PlayStation or N64 or Dreamcast, but like they made it work somehow, and it was really cool. So and also at the time it was Tony Hawk was like huge, so it had to be everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played those for a really, really, really long time, all three of those games. And then I bought the subsequent Mario Advance games. I think Mario Advance 2 was Super Mario World, then Yoshi's Island, then Mario 3. I think they came out in that order.
I think because of with the Mario games, I had most of them on Nintendo and Super Nintendo. I didn't even, I'm like, I played that already. I can skip it.
Man, you're missing out on the best versions of these games, man. Like, maybe not Yoshi's Island, but Mario 2 and 3 are these are incredible versions of those games. And I think they're on NSO also. So if you haven't played those versions of the games, I highly recommend it.
They are. I think I need to play them and beat them. I think because I had the Mario collection on the Super Nintendo, and it had like those remakes of them. I just thought they were the same thing on the Game Boy, so I just didn't like really pay no attention to it or anything.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I wonder how many people thought that too, right, at the time. But I just especially to like my parents probably bought me this, right, for one reason or another, because 2001 I was 13, 14, 13, I don't know, somewhere
I was
in there.
20. I had just turned 21.
So like
that year,
I didn't have it, didn't have any way of really making money or anything, so they probably bought it for me. But actually I do remember my mom bought it for me, and it was I don't remember for what reason. I just remember she picked me up. I had some sort of appointment or something, and we went to that appointment, and she like bought it for me, and the Mario game, and like the weird Game Boy Advance headphones that were like this real nasty plastic. But yeah, man, the Game Boy Advance is such a great little console. It's actually sitting on my shelf down there in that little blue box on the bottom shelf. It's down there.
Oh wow.
And then, obviously the SP came out and was like a game changer. But
man, when the SP came, it became the system to have. I remember.
Yeah, I remember when the SP came out, and that was like I was getting more and more into stuff like Final Fantasy and stuff, and I was like, looking at Final Fantasy, which versions were remade for that console. They made the not Final Fantasy Origins that came out on PlayStation, but it was 1 and 2 and some sort of weird remake. And then they made 4 and 6, I think, remade 4 and 6 for that console.
For a Game Boy Advance? I can actually check for you.
Which I still never played either. And they had the Kingdom. That was the first of the for everybody who's mad about Kingdom Hearts spinoffs. Game Boy Advance had your first one, so you can
okay. So they had Final Fantasy 1 and 2 Dawn of Souls, Final Fantasy 4 events, Final Fantasy 5 events, and Final Fantasy 6 events, and then Final Fantasy Tactics events. So because 5 never came here, we got 5 in the Chrono Trigger release on PlayStation 1. Because when they brought out Final Fantasy Mixed Quest, I think that was Final Fantasy 3 or 4. It was one of them. I think it's 4. Um, and then when we got Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo, that was actually 6. So like I think like I definitely know 5 didn't come here until the PlayStation 1 version. And then I think that's when they re-released it on Game Boy Advance later on down the line as the original one.
Yeah, man, those PlayStation collections were like a revelation for Final Fantasy fans.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. I think the so I know I definitely had Metroid Zero uh and Metroid 4 uh and then I also had uh Mario Kart on Game Boy. Um
Yeah,
which was
Super Circuit, right? That's what it was called.
yeah, I didn't really care for that
I
Mario
I
game. I
hated
mean,
that Mario Kart. I had it too, and I ended up getting rid of it. Honestly, it was like one of the. I traded it for I forget what I
uh-huh.
traded it for, but I remember specifically like because it felt like the Super Nintendo one, and I hated the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hate the Super Nintendo one. It kind of felt like a greatest hits kind of game. It's like I feel like I played this already with a couple of new tracks. Um, because I like the DS one. It's amazing. I
Yeah,
love the DS one.
yeah. Mario Kart DS was my favorite one going into Mario Kart 8 for
Hmm.
sure. I mean, I liked the 3DS one too, which I think was what 7, right?
Yes.
Uh, but at the same time, it kind of did feel like an extension of DS, and like DS, man, those tracks in DS were just awesome.
It was. It, I think the DS one had like you could use one cart and wirelessly everybody could play off that one cart for like versus mode and stuff.
Mhm.
And if you wanted more tracks, you had to have your own game, but you could still connect and everything. And I remember meeting some people for a gaming group, and that's how I became friends with some people. Um, and just playing like Mario Kart there and having a ball. I'm just like, yeah, this is so good, and just enjoying it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
I yeah, so I mean like there were a lot of like really interesting, and it's weird because like the DS didn't, or the Game Boy Advance didn't live that long because the DS was coming out, right? And like
yeah,
they like were like, "Oh, we're going to run this three-pillar system," until the DS took off, and they're like, "Never mind, we're just going to shove the port in the bottom of the DS Lite, and you can rebuy it."
right.
Uh,
But like people did have a Game Boy Advance. They did love the system. I think it's just like I think the games became not forgettable or unmemorable, but I think like the DS took off so well that people have had more fun with that system than Game Boy. Than the Game Boy Advance. Cause like Astro Boy on Game Boy Advance, like people love that game.
yeah, and like people love Minish Cap, and
Yeah.
both those Metro games are very well regarded, and
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of our first taste of Fire Emblem and Golden Sun, which people like really love Golden Sun.
I bought both of them.
I've
Yeah.
never played Golden Sun, but I, I'm hopefully going to remedy that at some point. But there's a lot of really interesting ideas on the Game Boy Advance, and like it was like really cool because it was like a Super Nintendo in your pocket. Plus, like
Yeah.
we got 16-bit Pokemon for the first time. We got Mario vs Donkey Kong, right, which they just remade for Switch last year,
Uh-huh.
which was an amazing game. We got sort of weird spin-offs like Pokemon Mystery Dungeon was one, right? That was that kind of weird dungeon crawler / roguelike essentially. Advance Wars, right? I mean,
Advance Wars, that took off. That I think everybody fell in love with the first one, but I remember the second one just being like literally Game of the Year nomination. So many people just love that game.
Right. And N64 got Paper Mario, but the Game Boy Advance got the Mario and Luigi games for the first time, which that first one's still like an amazing game. I love that first one.
I need to work on that game for it.
We got I mean, this was also that era where Sonic was starting to make its way over, right? And like the Sonic Advance games are like amazing 2D Sonic games, which are, I don't think they get talked about enough, but I know at least the first two are like really good. It felt like, it's like, man, these are the games we should have had on Game Gear like a decade ago.
Was this was okay, so this is before the GameCube. Was this when Sega started publishing games on a Nintendo console?
I think so. Sonic Advance came later. It wasn't that first year. It came, I think so. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle was the first Sonic game on GameCube. Because then the following year they released Sonic Adventure DX. Sonic Advance launched alongside Sonic Adventure 2 Battle because they connected via the link cable, I think.
So Game Boy Advance was Game Boy Advance out before GameCube or vice versa?
It was out that summer before, like 6 months before.
And so when GameCube came out, I believe that's when Sega started publishing it after they got out of the hardware business. I believe.
Yes. Let me hold on. Let me make sure.
Because Dreamcast is 1999.
Yeah. So GameCube. So GBA released in, what'd you say, July of 2001?
Yes, July 11th, 2001.
And GameCube released in September.
So they both released in the same year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it released in Japan in September, and then in North America it released in November because it came out. I remember it came out right around my birthday.
Okay.
Like the day before the Xbox.
Because I ended up buying my GameCube, like I said, once the 99 dropped, because I was going to college and working at JCPenney outlet at that time. So I was paying for school, and then when school was paid, I walked my tail down to Sears and bought a black GameCube and started getting those games with Game Boy Advance. Yeah, Super Saga is on NSO, so I need to start that. Yeah. In fact, all like the Advanced Mario games that you were talking about, I think all of them are on the GBA on Switch.
Yeah, I have the app open right now to kind of, kind of remember what was out and what wasn't.
Yeah.
Man, we got 2 F-Zero games on that thing.
Yeah, it's the Japanese version, Climax, which I never played.
Well, there's a Japanese version, but then there's 2 other ones. There's Maximum Velocity and GP Legend. And then Climax was the Japanese one. So
okay.
What a weird 2 F-Zero games on the same console. Come on. And they're like, well, that's too many. We gotta wait like 25 years to release the next one.
GP Legend, Climax, and Maximum Velocity. That's what I love about NSO, is giving us the Japanese versions of these games for consoles.
Yeah, that weird Star whatever. What's it called? Starry.
Yeah, Starry. Yeah, the Starry games. We got one for DS, but I think the series started on GBA. And they're like they're all 3 games for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Golden Sun 1 and 2. Um, I did not know that they broke that game up in two pieces. I was just like, wait a
What?
minute, I'm done with this game for Golden Sun. I'm like, wait, I'm done with this game. What the this is good.
Oh,
Huh?
are they direct sequels to each other?
Golden Sun. The second game is so they it's kind of like a Harry Potter thing. How they broke it in part 1 and part
Mm,
2.
okay.
The second half of Golden Sun is still part of the first game, but it's
Uh-huh.
the other half of the game because they didn't have
Okay.
enough memory to put the whole game on one.
Hmm.
I'm like, are you serious? And so when the DS one came out, that was a whole different story, but people didn't like that third one.
Hmm. I just I guess I didn't really know that. That's weird. But I mean, Nintendo was already experimenting with splitting games, right? Like Pokemon had been
Yeah.
doing it for a while. Zelda had just done it with the Oracle games. Yeah, I mean they had been experimenting with that for a while, right? So um and then they tried to like link the games together, right, with the Four Swords game on GameCube and Game Boy Advance. Like you needed them both essentially. Uh
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I wish we would have got Phoenix, right? But that's something that we didn't get to the DS version. Man,
Yeah,
Medal
that's
of Honor. Oh, go ahead. Go
uh
ahead, Corey.
I was gonna say that's arguably probably the better place to play Phoenix, right? Essentially though. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like them putting, Animal Crossing on the GameCube instead of the 64, which is why it looks like an N64 game. Uh,
And I didn't hear about Animal Crossing being on N64 until like later on after I bought the game. I'm like,
yeah,
this is an N64 game? Like, I don't remember them even mentioning it at
well, it
E3.
wasn't called Animal Crossing. I think it was called like Forest Animals or Animal Forest or something. Like it
Okay.
wasn't called Animal Crossing. Um, and I remember they kind of put it in like this weird category. They were like, it's kind of like this the Dinosaur Planet game that they ended up turning into Star Fox, right? Like,
Yes.
dude, I still remember that Dinosaur Planet game being shown off, and I was like really excited for it. And then, they ended up putting Star Fox on GameCube in it. But like, I told you, my N64 box still has Dinosaur Planet on it. Like,
That's crazy.
because they announced it at launch. Because I mean, I got my N64 like 2 months after launch, so like they had still were in like those launch boxes with like it had Shadows of the Empire,
Hmm.
Mario, Pilot Wings, uh, all these, GoldenEye I think is on the back because they had announced it already. Like, there's a lot going on that console, and like that Dinosaur Planet was one of them. There's also a stormtrooper on the side of my N64 box, which like makes no sense. I mean, it does. There were great Star Wars games on there, but like,
Uh-huh.
just like you think of Nintendo 64, like Star Wars isn't really what you think of. Uh, so,
uh, I
oh
wonder, was
man,
there any. Oh, go
I
ahead,
didn't,
Corey.
I didn't know Extreme G was on the N64 NSO. I loved Extreme
Yeah.
G. Maybe they'll bring Extreme G2 to NSO on
I've never
GameCube
played it.
2 and 3. That'd be awesome. Anyways, sorry.
No,
Uh
no, no. I honestly, I've never played any of the Extreme G games.
oh man, it was like Acclaim's answer to F-Zero, but they were motorcycles instead of hover cars.
Ah,
Let's see. Oh, and then like this was the first generation of the remakes of the Pokemon remakes, as we got Fire Red and Leaf Green,
yes.
which Fire Red, man. I wish I still had my copy. I love Fire Red.
And okay, so that one I didn't buy the remakes. I only did just Sapphire.
Mm.
Yeah, that was the only Pokemon that I brought for the system.
Yeah, I bought Fire Red. I loved Fire Red. I mean, I loved Red and Blue, right? So I
Uh
oh man,
I think the oh go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have more games for Game Boy Advance than I realize. I think I just got rid of them all because I needed money for rent and I wanted GameCube games.
Yeah, I I I know I didn't have a lot for it due to the fact of me going to school. So I couldn't just like buy a lot of games. I mean, I picked some games here and there that I could afford. Um, and was I think a lot of my with at during that time, a lot of my money when it came to games, I was doing like a lot of uh GameCube and Dreamcast, not Dreamcast, GameCube and a little bit soon PS2 and Xbox. So my handheld for the Game Boy Advance was like was like here and there. Um,
Mhm.
and so if a game got like really dropped in price, I would go and buy it and stuff. And it wasn't until like the DS I started really going crazy because like I paid off my school. I didn't really have like a car or anything. I had a phone bill, but that was like pretty much it and
Mhm.
stuff. And I when I stopped going to school, I just made a decision not to go to college and stuff and work more full time because I was getting paid more doing full time. So when I did that, I was able to afford like more games and stuff like that
Mhm.
during that time.
Um, yeah, I just yeah, I mean, I was still in high school, so I never really had that in my brain during that time. But I do remember like GameCube and Game Boy Advance being this weird kind of combination, right? Like you had Crystal
Mm-hmm.
Chronicles, and that weird Pac-Man game that I can never remember the name of, that I think actually just came to, like, they remade it for current generation. Uh, but I forgot to mention this, but the one thing everybody was excited about was the return of Castlevania, 2D Castlevania,
Yeah,
because they had what, 3 games on there.
yeah. I played this. Well, this Castlevania is on the Castlevania collection. I skipped like Harmony of Dissonance, or for that one, Circle of the Moon. I skipped, and when the DS one came, that's when I got back into Castlevania.
hmm I just remember it was like people were complaining because it was really dark because the screen wasn't backlit.
Yeah,
Uh, and they sold that little weird worm light.
the weird accessories for the Game Boy Advance,
Yeah,
or for handhelds in general.
yeah. How do you how do you feel about like Game Boy Advance really being the main focus of like counterfeit games right now?
um,
It just
actually,
crossed. I know
that's
that's kind of a random change of direction, but I'm
no.
looking at Game Boy Advance games, and like all these articles are like how to tell a fake Game Boy Advance to a real one, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that like counterfeit games were like, this is when it started becoming huge.
So I didn't know anything about it for about counterfeit Game Boy Advance games. Um,
Yeah,
all I know
it
is
started really happening during the DS era when, like, obviously Nintendo stopped making Game Boy Advance games so they could focus on the DS. Uh,
I remember like that, was it the R4 or cartridge or something in Japan? It was something like that. Um, that they was like putting like, it was a thing that you could put like games on it, like hard drive games. It was kind of like a hard drive for the DS, I think, or I believe R4 cards. That was
mhm.
called. That's when I knew stuff was happening. I didn't know counterfeit stuff was happening for Game Boy events. Even when I was reading like Game Pro, EGM, and stuff like that, I didn't know that that was going on. It was mostly games that was coming out that you could just buy at the store. So I wonder if that was more of a Japanese thing than America.
Hmm. Yeah, I wonder, but also like I'm looking at this stuff now, right? And it's like, man, this is the especially like the Pokemon games, and I know, some people we know have played through like that weird ROM hack of Mother 3 that they shoved onto a Game Boy Advance
Uh
cart.
huh.
Uh, just a lot of the RPG style stuff like Fire Emblem and Golden Sun have a lot of counterfeit versions out there. The Pokemon games definitely do, all of them. Um, so yeah, I just know that that kind of became bigger once the DS was rolling around, and like people were figuring out how to like shove Game Boy Advance games onto like essentially what were SD cards back then, but not quite SD cards, and
Yeah,
putting them inside the cartridge, like finding molds of cartridge Game Boy Advance cartridges and shoving them in there. Uh, I mean, and that's when things started becoming more online. I mean, that was the Dreamcast's biggest problem, right? It was like you could just burn the games to a CD and like essentially just play it, you know?
yeah. There was like a certain dish you had to use.
Mhm.
Um,
And it was a little bit
so
harder. It was a little bit harder than on Game Boy Advance than it was to just burn rip a CD, but like people were figuring it out and it started becoming really, and it now like when you go on eBay, like Game Boy Advance games are the ones that everybody's the most picky about because it could be the most likely to be the scam game, you know. Um, so if you're looking for retro games, watch out. People could be scamming you. Don't do it.
yeah,
Weird times, huh?
very weird. I just knew like the R4 cart that was happening in Japan because Nintendo was trying to find out who's using them, how they was doing it, so they could sue them and stuff.
Hmm.
Everybody believe me, Nintendo was on their like, suing grind during that time too.
Hmm.
Trust me.
Yeah. Uh, yeah.
Ooh, excuse me.
Uh, oh, so getting back to like the launch stuff, the other game I wanted to shout out, I didn't get it at launch, but I did play a lot of it. Was the
Uh
was Rayman Advance, and it was it was a port of the PS1 Rayman game, the first one,
yes.
and it was really fun. It was really I don't want to say weird, but it was cool to play a different platformer than Mario at the time,
Uh
and
huh.
wasn't Sonic either. uh, and obviously Rayman 2 and 3D, 2 and 3 were 3D games, I think, but Rayman 1 was like this weird kind of, I want to say a mix between something like almost like Arrow the Acrobat mixed with that Mickey Mouse, what was it called? The Magical Quest featuring Mickey Mouse or something, where you changed the costumes depending on what level it was, and you had to use the costumes to solve puzzles or fight enemies, right? Kind of almost like a Mega Man esque game. Uh,
Yes.
it
Was
kind of
that
reminded me.
Capcom?
I think I don't. It was either Capcom or Virgin. I can't remember.
Was it Disney Mickey Mouse or just Mickey
Yeah,
Mouse?
it was. I think it was the Magical Mirror starring Mickey Mouse. Is what it was called. And then it had two sequels that I had no idea existed on the Game Boy Advance. Ironically, uh, so yeah, Rayman was cool. I thought the art style was cool. It was very vibrant, and I
Hmm.
remember. I remember not even knowing what Rayman was, but I got those weird Game Boy Advance Nintendo Power issues. There were four of them, that were literal just strategy guides for the Game Boy Advance games that were out. And Rayman was like featured on the second one, and I was like, I should check this game out. It looks cool.
I remember playing Rayman. but I can't remember what system that I played it on. Because it wasn't Game Boy that I played on. I played it on the TV on a console.
It must have been like a PlayStation because that's what it came to originally.
Yes, then it had to be PlayStation. Was it also 3 Duo or CDI?
I don't remember.
Or I think it was PlayStation then. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a really good version of that game. It was really fun. I would like to see that come to the NSO at some point. Actually,
Oh heck yeah.
not that Ubisoft is in really a position of putting games out for free right now, but you know what I mean. Oh man, Rayman Origins and Legends, those games are so
Okay.
good.
So yeah, Corey, it was Capcom. So Disney Magical Quest starring Mickey and Minnie. Disney Magical Quest 2 starring Mickey and Minnie.
So
Uh
Minnie
and
wasn't in
then
the Super Nintendo version.
no, she wasn't. And then Disney Magical Quest 3 starring Mickey and Donald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because it
Yeah.
was like a top-down game on the Super Nintendo.
No, it was a 2D side scroller.
I thought it was top-down.
It was 2D side scroller.
Because like you said, it had the fireman
Mm-hmm.
outfit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a 2D side scroller. I played a lot of it. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say about the Game Boy Advance except like it's a really fun, cool console. I love the design of it, like the horizontal layout of it. Like I actually prefer the original design of the Game
Mm-hmm.
Boy Advance over the SP, but the SP had the backlit screen and like the lithium batteries, right? So like you could just charge it. Um, so you know we can't leave a Game Boy Advance discussion without talking about the Game Boy Micro.
Yeah.
What a weird thing that was.
That thing, oh
Early
gosh.
the early 2000s, right? When everything was getting smaller and smaller was better, right? Like
Uh-huh.
cell phones, you know, all these things were just getting smaller and like people love small things, you know, and Game Boy Micro was just another small piece of technology you could own. And it was not convenient at all, actually.
Yeah, it released in 2005, September 13th, 2005. It's a 32-bit handheld game console. The Micro lacks backward compatibility for original Game Boy and Game Boy Color games.
Mhm.
Um,
Which is what made it cheap, right? I think it was like $49.99 when it came out or something, right? It was really
uh,
cheap.
Introductory price $99.99. Uh, and then they dropped the price, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, they must have dropped the price later because I remember seeing it for like $49.99 or $59.99 somewhere at like a lot
yeah,
of places when the DS was out.
it was discontinued 2008. 2 years before the Game Boy Advance SP.
Really,
So I
SP came
mhm.
out in 2008?
Yeah, the Game Boy Micro was discontinued in 2008, 2 years before the Game Boy Advance SP.
But
Uh,
it came out after the SP.
um,
That
let me
was the
see.
third iteration.
What the Micro?
Yeah. Let's see.
Yeah,
SP came out in February of 2003. And then
I mean that's
Game
what
Boy
Wikipedia says.
Oh, so they retired the Micro before the SP, I guess. But
Yes, because
it came out after the SP, but it was retired before the SP was because the SP was discontinued in 2010. Okay.
10. Yes.
Okay. Accessories were
Uh,
discontinued in December 2009.
it outsold the SP outsold the Micro. Um, It says 43.57 million units shipped um, for it. Um, this is when they had like the flip. You was able to flip it, so it was smaller. It's like a compact case. Everybody call it the makeup makeup edition of the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah.
Satoru Okada led the development of the original Game Boy Advance. And then he redesigned it for the SP. Oh, this was the SP was the first rechargeable one. Yeah, it was the first device in the Game Boy family with a rechargeable battery. Because I remember with my Game Boy Advance, I only stayed with the Game Boy Advance. I didn't do the SP, but I found the SP at my job because someone dropped it and left it. I think they were traveling. And so I found it and I was playing games on it and everything. Charged it up. It's just like, well, I'm gonna keep this here at work and I just bring my Game Boy Advance games and play it on there. And I did.
That was cool. I played a lot of Game Boy Advance on the DS.
Yeah, same.
I thought the cool thing about the DS was you could choose which screen you could play on, like the top or the bottom screen.
But I think I stopped using. At one point, I stopped using it because the Game Boy Advance player was on the GameCube. So I just played most of my stuff at home on my big TV or on my TV, and then I would use the SP because it was just like, this is saving me money on batteries, and I could play Metroid Fusion and Metroid Zero Mission on my TV, and then I would take my original Game Boy Advance if I was going like on a church trip or something. And I would just play it there during the nighttime, and then at night I would just keep it in my bag because I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, man, cool system.
Yeah,
I'm kind of glad we're going through this right now because I kind of forgot a lot of it.
But well, it was. We really don't think about like video game launch lineups, like when it releases, like, yeah, we're hyped and we're excited for the games, but then as time goes on, you kind of forget about the launch lineup and just think about all the games that came after it. Because like when we get to the N64, I'm like, everybody, Pilot Wings is Super Mario 64. Like, it's I know we'll say I have a lot probably to say the Super Mario 64, but it's gonna be the games that came after that lineup. Like this, I think this is the only N64 in all releases of video games, handheld and console. The N64 in America has the lowest of all time. 2 games.
Yeah, but I mean, you could argue Mario 64 was kind of all you needed, right?
Yeah, true. That game was long, trying to get everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only game I played, I think, for like months. I had that. I did have Pilot Wings, but I had Mario 64 and like Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey, I think, were the 2 games I had for a long time.
I had Mario 64, and then we had a rental place by me, so I was renting like Mischief Maker and anything else they had. It wasn't until like the THQ was bringing out the wrestling games and Ocarina of Time and Yoshi's Story 64, and then Donkey Kong 64. Like when a lot of that stuff was coming out, like even Resident Evil 2. But we're going to speak about that when we get to the N64 next episode. Yeah, But everybody, if you got NSO, if you have a Nintendo Switch NSO and you got it connected online, the reason I'm saying that because if you have a light and you out and about, you might not be connected online, so you can't play these GBA games. Yeah, if you're a special pass member on NSO, give some of these in Game Boy Advance games a try. Um, you know,
Yes.
and if you still have an SP or a micro, play games on that one too.
Yeah.
Man, the Game Boy Advance on GameCube, if having a that disc and having it connected under the just full on memories.
Yeah, it was a good time.
So, but everybody, we're gonna wrap it up there. If you guys had a Game Boy Advance, let us know. Join our Discord and or join us, follow us on our socials. Let us know. Did you actually have an SP or a regular Advance or a micro? Did you game on the GameCube? And what was did you get any launch games or what was your game list and memories? Let us know even on the comments here on YouTube or in, anywhere you hear this podcast. With that, everybody, have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on Expression Pass. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Sana Dirrig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Christian S. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.